G'day and welcome to the ZipGEN platform. Imagine being in your customer's house, designing a kitchen with them and giving them a stunning render like the one on the screen here in just under 10 minutes. Well, that's exactly what ZipGEN does. And today I'm going to run you through a demo to demonstrate just how that can be achieved. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm currently on the profile page for my user account, and this is the starting point for any new ZipGEN design. As you can see, I have a list of projects in front of me. To start a new design, you simply click the New Design button, and this prompts for a reference ID and a client name. The reference ID is automatically populated, or you can change it to whatever you like. For the client name, I'm going to put in Kettle Kitchen and hit Create. This brings us to the first step in the design process, which is select number of walls. Before we get into that, however, let's have a quick look at the UI. On the left-hand side, we have the navigation. These are all the steps that we'll go through throughout the design process. On the right-hand side, we have the properties panel, which will update based on what's selected. And on the bottom, we have the main selection area. You'll also notice these set of icons in this blue panel. These are view controls. So for example, we can select this 3D view and it switches the view to 3D. So to begin, let's go ahead and select the number of walls. I'm going to use 2 wall, which means it's open at the bottom and on the right. We can change the size of our room by simply grabbing a wall and moving it, or we can be very specific. So for instance, let's change wall B length to 4,000 and we'll change wall A to 4,500. Once you're happy with the room shape, we can go ahead and hit next. In this step, we have the opportunity to add openings to our design. As you can see from the bottom bar, we can add either a window, a door, or an opening, which is a void. Let's start by adding a window. As you can see, it's been added to the model. There are a few things that we can do to the window once it's been placed. For instance, we can hover over it, click and drag, which allows us to reposition the window around the space. We can also position our mouse over the end of the window, click and drag, and change the width of the window. If you'd like to be a little bit more precise, you can do this on the right-hand side menu where you can change the actual properties of the window. So for instance, we have a 1423 width here. Let's change that to 1400 and hit enter. Perfect. Let's jump into the next step. In this step, we need to start making some design decisions, as this is where we select the kitchen footprint or layout that the customer wants. For example, we could select a single, a galley, an L shape, and so on. By default, the single kitchen is selected, which you can see in the bottom bar, with no island. If we go across here, we can select from galley, L shape, U shape, and G shape. You'll notice with G shape and in some other occasions, there's more than one option down the bottom. What this means is we can change where the opening into the kitchen is, or if we want dual. For now, let's select L shape. Once you've selected that, there are a few options you have. You can rotate it by selecting this rotate widget in the middle of the model, and you can see that rotates it around the design. Or we can add an island down the bottom here. As you can see, we have 2 options, horizontal and vertical. If we select one, we can see that it shows up in the viewer. We can also make some edits to the actual benches. So if I select this bench, you can see this widget at the bottom. I can use that to change the length, or I can grab the island and move it around. Not only that, with islands we can change the depth. So on the right, we can select from 900 and 1200. For now, I'm going to leave it how it is and move on to the next step. We're almost at the point where we can start generating designs. Before we do that, however, we need to select the appliances that the customer wants to see in their different design options. As you can see on the screen, there's quite a few selected by default. So let's go ahead and make some changes to them. To do that, I've selected the fridge on the bottom bar. We can change the type of fridge and the size in the right-hand side menu. So let's change the type to single door and the size to 600. Next, let's change the oven. We do that by selecting the oven and changing the type. I'm going to change it to an underbench oven. Lastly, we can remove appliances that we don't want in our design. And we do that by selecting the appliance and under type, selecting none. and you can see that it's removed from our model space. Next, let's have a look at some generated designs. Once our designs have finished being generated, they'll become available in the bottom bar. As you can see, we have 5 different options to choose from, and we can switch between those by simply selecting the different buttons at the bottom. If at any time we want to generate 5 new designs, we can do that by selecting this Generate More Designs button, which will refresh the list. If you found a design that you're happy with, but want to make a few tweaks, we can do that in this step. We can make changes to the appliance locations and also the different types of cabinets. Let's change the location of the fridge, for example. We do that by hovering over the fridge, and you'll notice some grey icons showing up on the bench tops. These are locations that the fridge can go. So let's select the fridge by clicking and holding and dragging it over to one of these new positions. Perfect, you can see the location is updated for the fridge. We can also make different edits by selecting the components in the model. Let's try making some edits to the cabinet. So if I select the cabinet, you'll see on the right hand side menu that we get various options to change and add different bits and pieces. Let's change the type from a ground carcass to a full height, and we do that by selecting this type drop down and selecting full height. Perfect. We can also change the faces. So if I select this carcass next to it, I can change the face from a 3 drawer to a 1 drawer and pot drawer. Lastly, let's make some changes to the island, and we do that by selecting the island bench top. Here we can change the ends from waterfall to overhang or caps, and we can also change the type of seating. By default it's full, which means we get a full overhang here of 300mm. Let's change that to none, and if we do that you can see that we get a double carcass with no seating at the back. We can also change the position of the seating by switching between left and right or centered. So let's select left, for example. There are lots of edits we can do in this section, so I encourage you to try different bits and pieces. Or if you need more information, check out the Learn section in the About drop-down. Now let's look at rendering our design by hitting the next button. At the render step, we can really start to stylize the kitchen to get it looking just how the customer wants it. And we can do that by updating the different materials, panel types, and door handles. By default, we have 3 different selections at the bottom. We have the modern style, classic, and shaker. If we switch between these, for example, let's select the shaker style, you can see that the panels and handles and materials update in the model. By default, we have 3 different options for color palettes. You can switch between these to change the materials, or you can change the different bits and pieces in the model individually. There are 2 different ways to select the different components in the model. If we hover over the cabinets, for example, you can see this group of cabinets get highlighted. If I hold Shift, you can see the highlight changes to a single. So at any time, if you want to select an individual cabinet, hold Shift, or if you want to select a group, release the Shift button. Let's select the group. When we do that, you can see the right-hand side menu updates. We can change the material, handles, and panel type. Let's try changing the material from cinder to classic white, and you can see that group of cabinets get updated. We can also change the handle type. For example, let's change the handles to a round knob. Perfect. Selecting different components in the model give different options. For instance, if I select the splashback, you'll notice I only get a material update. If we switch between the different tabs, we get different material options. Let's try changing this to some tiles. Lastly, let's try changing the panel type of a single cabinet. So if I select Shift and select that cabinet, let's change it to a shaker glass. There are lots of different ways to stylize, so I encourage you to look through the different materials and find the materials that suit your customer's design. Lastly, let's have a look at generating the design report. We now have a design that the customer is happy with. And at this point, we can generate a design report which will include a series of rendered perspectives or technical drawings, which either the customer can take away with them or you can keep as a reference. To do that, we simply select the Download Report button, and here we can select what to include in that report. As you can see, I have rendered perspectives selected, but you can also include technical drawings or remove them. Once you're happy, select the Download Report button, and this will download the PDF file onto your computer. We've learned a lot here today, and there's a lot to take in, so I encourage you to go back through the design, which you can do by selecting the back button, and make some different edits. Or if you need to learn more about the different sections, try checking out the Learn page, which includes a set of tutorial videos for each part in this design process. Finally, if you want to contact us at any point, you can book in a demo, or you can select the chat button on the bottom right hand side of the window, and one of us will chat to you as soon as we can. In any case, enjoy learning ZipGEN and happy designing.